Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Believe in Bengal podcast. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots. Right now, we're joined by a very special friend. Of course, he's a former NFL player, a former NFL scout. He's an analyst for NFL media. This guy wears so many hats. He's also the host of the Believe in Jaguars podcast. Everyone, give a warm hello to Bucky Brooks. Bucky, how you doing, my friend?
My guy, Solomon, what's going on, man?
Hey, man, look, it's all about the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Of course, we got to talk about our guy, T. Higgins, because I believe that our league has changed. Like, things change very rapidly, as you well know, Bucky. We are now in a league where teams can accommodate a $50 million a year quarterback, a wide receiver one who's making $30 million a year, and a wide receiver two that's making $20 million a year. That's where our league has gone between the quarterbacks and the wide receivers. They're so important to the brand that is the NFL that teams can accommodate it. So tell me, why is it that the Bengals seem to believe that they can't keep Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase, and T. Higgins on the same team for years to come?
Yeah, it's an old way of thinking. Like today, the game has shifted. It shifted to a passing league. And so the traditional positions that were viewed as the marquee positions, they've shifted. It used to be about the running back, and it still was about the offensive, like the left tackle and right tackle. And those positions are important, but it really depends on your quarterback, because I think some would contend in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow can make the offensive line right by having the weapons that he had on the outside. And if you go back, they already let you know how they thought, because in that draft, when Ja'Marr Chase was coming out, they had an opportunity to take Penei Sewell, and they elected to take the pass catcher over the pass protector. And it's worked out for them because they've gone to a Super Bowl with the playmakers on the outside. And I won't say a hodgepodge offensive line, but they've invested in the weapons on the perimeter. And so you are right. $50 million for a quarterback, $30 million for Chase, $20+ million for T. Higgins. That can be the recipe. But what you typically have to do is you have to make sure that the way the quarterback is being paid, it gives you the freedom and the flexibility to keep his weapons around. And without looking at Joe Burrow's deal, did they carve out enough where they can keep Ja'Marr Chase and T. Higgins, or is it just a refusal to give up that big cash that they're going to have to give up when it comes to paying both of those wideouts?
Yeah, I think it might just be sort of working on the old model and yet to transition with the new model. Some teams have done it. We've seen the Philadelphia Eagles. They're paying Jalen Hurts $50 million a year. We see A.J. Brown getting $32 million a year at the wide receiver position. And they haven't forgotten about the other wide receiver, Devontae Smith, who's getting around 25 to 28 mil per year.
Yes.
So we already see the model is just that some teams move faster with the trends than others. Is that a fair statement?
I think it's a really fair statement. And, the thing about it with T. Higgins, everyone expected T. Higgins to kind of set the market because he is a unique player. And I think bringing up the example of the Philadelphia Eagles is probably as close to as accurate as the Cincinnati Bengals duo can be described. I believe in Philadelphia, you kind of have almost guys that are sharing the marquee as the number one guy. A.J. Brown is in that slot, the pecking order, but look, Devontae Smith is just as good. So 1A, 1B, however you want to describe it, is that T. Higgins and Ja'Marr Chase, there's some to that because T. Higgins' game translates to being one that he could be the number one receiver elsewhere. And there are times that he plays that number one role in Cincinnati. So pay him what he's due. And look, we saw it with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. They've been able to do it. So it can be done. You have to know what your quarterback needs to be successful. And in Cincinnati, they need both of those weapons to allow Joe Burrow to be what Joe Burrow is.
And to your point, over the 4 seasons that T. Higgins has played with Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals, 80% of his catches, Bucky, have translated into either a first down or a touchdown. You and I both know that's a phenomenal ratio. This guy, when he's been asked to be the number one, when Ja'Marr hasn't been able to play, he's been a clear number one when asked to. But yet he's not selfish. Well, he'll go back to being the number two when he needs to as well. But yet he is a formidable threat on the other side. Let's move on, because I want to ask you this question about the league as a whole. Everyone knows that Patrick Mahomes has won 3 of the last 5 Super Bowls early in his career. So he sits there at the pinnacle as the number one quarterback in our league. Tell me, where does Joe Burrow rank when it comes to the elite quarterbacks in our league right now? And what are some of the traits that truly stand out about Joe Burrow?
He's right there. He's right in that conversation because I think people quickly forget, injuries may have done that. But I mean, for a while, they're like, Joe Burrow was the Patrick Mahomes killer. I mean, they were calling Arrowhead Stadium Burrowhead because the Cincinnati Bengals were one of the few teams that could go toe-to-toe with the Kansas City Chiefs, and there was no fear factor. And that came from the quarterback who refuses to back down or bow down to Patrick Mahomes and some of the others. I think he's right there. Solid. I think what he has been able to do, one, we always judge quarterbacks not only on their individual talents, but how does the team respond to them? Well, we saw very quickly in Joe Burrow's tenure, they went to a Super Bowl. And some would say they could have, maybe should have won that Super Bowl with Joe Burrow at the helm. Right. I don't think he can be supplanted by Justin Herbert or Josh Allen or any of those guys until they have similar accomplishments and leading the team on his back, not on the defense or whatever. I think that puts him right there, number 2, number 3, wherever you want to put him. He's in that conversation to be one of the best in the league, if not the best.
Yeah, I want to add that, and from my perspective, I think as a competitor, I think he's second to none. In fact, I think he's equal to Patrick Mahomes. He is a true killer. And you know what I'm talking about. We're talking about across the landscape of sports. That's been Michael Jordan. That's been Kobe Bryant. That's been Tom Brady, right? And now we have Patrick Mahomes and we have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow comes to win. He plays to win. If he has to take 9 sacks to do it, Buck, he'll take 9 sacks, but he's going to get back up and come back slinging it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think the feed feeds off his swagger. Like, that's the one thing that, like, look, you and I, as former players, man, there is something when that quarterback is legit and he is an alpha dog competitor. And when he has it, there's a feeling that permeates the entire team. In defensive huddles, you're talking about all we need to do is just get the ball back. Get the ball back to Joe Burrow, and he can find a way to get it done. And there's a sense in that stadium when he has the ball and the game is on the line that he is going to do it. People can talk about it, but there are few people who can do it. And Joe Burrow has done it. And because of that, the Bengals always feel like as long as he's in the lineup, they have a chance to get it done.
Now, we should let our viewers here on the Believe in Bengals podcast on Bally Sports know that you are also a high school coach, and where you coach Granada Hills Charter School. It is the high school where John Elway attended and played quarterback. Am I right?
Absolutely right.
And the reason why I know this, I grew up in Los Angeles, California. I owned a home just down up the road from you in Porter Ranch. And just up the valley, as you well know, in the San Fernando Valley, there's a school by the name of Calabasas High. Yeah. That's where Jermaine Burton, the Bengals' third-round pick in this year's draft, went to Calabasas High. I want you to tell Bengals fans why they should be excited about their third-round pick, wide receiver Jermaine Burton.
They should be really excited because Jermaine Burton is not only a talented player, but he got a PhD in wide receiver play from no one other than Curtis Conway. Yeah. Curtis Conway coached him in high school, gave him some of those sweet nothings, some tricks of the trade that really helped him be a player that at the collegiate level played like a pro. And I think people have to understand when we talk about that, there is something to being a player that shows up at minicamp ready to go, ready to work, understanding coverage, understanding how to run routes, understanding the timing of the passing game. And so to me, it wasn't a coincidence that Tyler Boyd goes out. They bring in a Jermaine Burton because to me, Jermaine Burton is the next one that they're grooming to be part of the big three, because I still believe that T. Higgins is going to be around in Cincinnati beyond this year. But when you think about Ja'Marr Chase, T. Higgins, and Jermaine Burton stepping in, Jermaine Burton's going to be a prominent player. And I will say this, people that have been around the league understand what Tank Dell did for the Houston Texans and C.J. Stroud, Jermaine Burton can do for the Cincinnati Bengals. Young player that hits the ground running, makes big plays, and kind of alleviates and takes some of the pressure off the veteran players. That's what Jermaine Burton is going to be because he's a smooth playmaker on the outside.
Bucky, I want to expand on that a little bit because what we're seeing, and I think Tank Dell is a perfect example of it, we're seeing 11 personnel. And for our listeners, that means we're seeing almost every team in the league in their base offensive package. They're running with 3 wide receivers, right? one tight end, one running back. That slot wide receiver position seems to be the position that's now exploding. We see Jackson Smith and Jigba playing that position for Seattle, Tank Dell, and now Jermaine Burton. Teams are wanting to get more speed, more vertical speed, and explosive yards after the catch at that slot wide receiver position. What are you seeing as one of the trends right there at that slot wide receiver position? And seems like Jermaine Burton may be fitting that trend.
Okay, so there's a thing that we used to always talk about in the defensive back room, speed at 3. So when teams would line up in 11 personnel and they would configure the formation where that third guy, because we count the receivers from outside in 1, 2, and 3, that third guy is the innermost guy. They're now putting that speed receiver there. And what it does is, one, it gives a tell to the quarterback. Man or zone, I see right away. If there is a lumbering linebacker over top of that receiver, it's now zone coverage, and we're running him all the way over the top to the opposite hash, opposite number.
That's right. It's a over route, the over route.
Yeah, the deep over route. Tyreek Hill feasted on that for years in Kansas City. The other thing that you're getting, man, you're now getting a superior athlete at wide receiver over an inferior defender. I love defensive backs, but I now know in the high school ranks, man, those high school coaches are taking the best athletes, 1, 2, and 3. They're playing wide receiver. DBs, 4, 5, and 6 are now challenged to face a guy that has more athleticism, more explosiveness at wide receiver. Jermaine Burton is going to be positioned to be able to make those vertical plays, not only against nickels and linebackers, but safeties that get caught in those matchups in quarters coverage have to deal with someone that they can't run with. It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for a lot of teams having to face the Cincinnati Bengals.
Hey, Buck, the most dreaded route that a nickel corner who has to cover the slot receiver, the most dreaded route from the 40-yard going in, your slot fade. It frightens every defensive back across the National Football League. Am I right?
Yes. Yeah, it's a problem because, so for so long, Solid, they would talk about, hey, play to your help. But what teams are doing is they're condensing the formation. They're making it where you can't lean on that wide receiver, because normally if I'm the slot defender, I'm going to play outside in and funnel him to the post safety in the middle.
Right, to the
but
safety.
now it's tight. I can't really do that because there's so many things that they can, the deep over route and all these other things where if I'm on the outside, I'm out leverage running across the field. So now I play inside to take that away. It gives the quarterback all that field and space to throw to without help. It's a problem. And the smart and the innovative offensive coordinators and play designers, they're putting a really good receiver at slot, and they're wearing you out with the over and the slot fade because you can't cover both of them. You can't cover both.
Slot fade is a killer. I mean, look, I'm a defensive back by trade, and I get nervous even just saying the word slot fade. It's a killer, man. It's very, very hard when you have that much space on the outside and you can fade away from the defender, from all of your help, and now you're on an island with so much room to cover. I want to talk about Trevor Lawrence, because you are very close to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just last week and recently signed a contract, 5-year, $275 million. He's averaging $55 million a year, tied with Joe Burrow, right? For the highest average per year for any quarterback in the National Football League. And what I noticed is that the Jaguars signed him immediately after his 3rd year. You know, that's the earliest a team can sign a player on their rookie contract after 3 years in the NFL. The Bengals did the same with Joe Burrow. The Chargers did the same with Justin Herbert. And now the Jaguars have done it. I think it's smart business to get them signed early. The price tag is high, but as you well know, Buck, over time, the percentage of the cap, that number comes down. Why was this smart for the Jaguars to sign him earlier, sooner rather than later?
Okay, so there's hidden value in signing them as soon as they're eligible to be signed. A lot of people, when they hear the deal, 5-year, $275 million, they think that it automatically kicks in today. But what those guys are really doing, they're signing extensions that are tacked onto the 4th year and the 5th year option. So that deal it's still a lot of money, but that deal that looks like it's $55 million on paper, in reality, it's averaging $44 million, which in these terms, look, that puts them just above the Daniel Joneses of the world in terms of compensation over average. So it ties your quarterback to the franchise to 2030, 2031. The first 3 years of the deal are still at team-friendly prices. So the core of your team, and you got to remember, the Jags just did a blockbuster deal for Josh Allen. They have some other guys that are about to come due. They can pay those guys, Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, to keep them in the fold. And as we're seeing when it comes to quarterbacks, early in their career, it's about the playmakers around them. Later in the career, when they're commanding the money, it's about them elevating the young, cheap playmakers that you have around them. To me, it makes sense to pay them sooner rather than later, because guess what? The quarterback market never goes down. It only goes up.
It's only going up. Yeah, it's rising almost at an inflationary rate very rapidly. And we want our NFL fans and listeners to know, don't get overly alarmed when you hear the dollar amount that the quarterback is getting. In fact, the quarterback, we should be happy that they're getting paid a lot of money, because they got to make their entire life's earnings in a very short period of time during their NFL careers, which tends to be shorter than most sports, right? Around the country. So, but what you need to look at is the percentage of the salary cap that the player is taking up. No quarterback should ever take, say, more than 20% of the annual salary cap for the entire team. So by the time that Trevor Lawrence's contract kicks in 2026, he'll only take up 18% of their salary cap. So that tells you that they're well within alignment for what they want to pay the quarterback. So they're not overpaying him at $55 million. In fact, it's the sweet spot. So it's a good deal for the player who's getting $55 million, and it's good for the team because the percentage of the cap is below that threshold. So that's where it is a win-win for the team and for the player, Buck.
Yeah, it is a win-win for the team. So we talk about the deal, $275 million, 142 of that was fully guaranteed. And then there's another where it pushes it up to right around $200 million being guaranteed. That's man, right. What player is going to turn that down? And when you think about sliding the check of 38, 39 million across the table to be able to put that right in your direct deposit, man, why wouldn't you sign that deal? But it was one where when you listen to Trevor and when you listen to some of these other quarterbacks, they talk about, look, man, it means nothing if I don't have the weaponry around me to be able to do my job. Yeah. Some of these quarterbacks understand the value and having those teammates that it allows the game to be easy for them. So we sat here at the beginning and talked about T. Higgins and how vital he is to the offense. I am sure there's a way that they can rework this money to make sure that T. Higgins stays in the fold with Ja'Marr Chase to allow Joe Burrow to do what he does from the pocket.
Yeah, and I can't stress enough for NFL fans to just kind of relax and breathe when you see the quarterbacks getting all this money, because that tells you how robust the market is for the entire National Football League. There's no owner who's going broke because he had to pay their quarterback 50, and that number's soon going to be $60 million a year. Okay?
Dak Prescott's going to make it at that.
That's right. And Patrick Mahomes he's got a contract for $450 million. And guess what? Clark Hunt is happy to pay him that money because this guy has won 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. But none of the owners at the end of the year are finishing in the red. They all finish in the black. They all finish with high profit margins. So that tells you that our league is in a real strong financial place. They have a real strong financial balance sheet. So this is good for everyone. The NFL is alive and well. Hey, Buck, let's continue to move on because, as you well know, HBO Hard Knocks, the in-season version, is going to be covering the AFC North. There is no better division in all of football. Over the last 4 years, from 2020 through 2023, the AFC North has won more games than any division in the National Football League. So talk to me about what you expect from this Hard Knocks that's going to capture these games at the end of the year and into the playoffs. And to you, what makes the AFC North so good?
Man, like Solomon, there's something about the AFC North that has always been like, look, the reputation of the division itself speaks volumes. When you look at the schedule and you see teams coming from the North, everyone knows, man, it's a padded week. Put your mouthpiece in, bring your big boy pads on. There's a certain style of play that is consistent in the AFC North. It's going to be physical on defense. They're going to blitz you a lot. They're going to hit you around. They're going to knock your quarterback down and try and knock him out. And you got to be ready for it. And I think what is compelling about watching that division is being able to kind of get, I won't say insider trading, but trying to get that peek behind the curtain when these teams get ready to face one another. I think these teams are built with an eye towards what else is playing in the division. How are they going to play? And you have to build your team. And I learned this a long time ago, and I remember Bill Polian used to talk about it. The first thing you got to do when you build a team, you got to build a team to win the division. So all the teams in the AFC North are built a certain way because they know the gauntlet that is ahead of them when they have to play those division games.
Hey, look, the 4 quarterbacks are, I think, formidable. Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVP awards since 2019. We know that Joe Burrow, if I had to take a quarterback of the 4, I'm taking Joe Burrow every single time. But I like Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. I think he makes that team better. And Deshaun Watson, we don't know what we're going to get from him, but we know that he's capable of playing at a very high level. So the 4 quarterbacks, I think, are must-see TV. But if you had to pick a defense from these 4 teams, what team would you say has the best defense that you know can help that offense to potentially get to a Super Bowl in 2024?
It's tough, Solomon, right? Because there's so many different ways to look at it, right? As I go through and I'm going to scrimmage it out with you, as I think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's all about that front, man. It's all about TJ Watt up front, Alex Highsmith. I mean, they bring over Patrick Queen. So they weaken the Ravens and fortify their unit. And look, I'm going to say this. Joey Porter Jr. is going to be the next great cornerback that we see in this league in terms of what he's been able to do. But then I go over to the Cleveland Browns, and I'm talking about Myles Garrett doing what he does. He's over there having fun doing crossover moves before he attacks the tomato can on that offensive line. But Jim Schwartz doing something that's a throwback from when we were playing. They line up, they play man-to-man. They put a post safety. Hey, man, no help. We're going to win on the outside so we can blitz. So that's tough. And look, Solomon, I could talk about the Baltimore Ravens. They're really hurt by the loss of Michael McDonald.
Oh, there's no doubt. No doubt.
And what he did, because on paper, look, Baltimore Ravens fans don't want to hear me say this, smoke and mirrors all day. He was great. Man, he was doing it with the pen and pad and just fooling people and leading them into mistakes with a unit that I would say, talent-wise, is behind the other guys. And then I will say this. Cincinnati learned a valuable lesson last year in terms of the value of safety play.
That's right.
When you let 2 guys, one Von Bell go, Jesse Bates go, and you don't have like those traffic cops in the middle of the field that allow you to do some of the things that Lou Anarumo likes to do. You saw quickly they got it back. Von Bell comes back. They're able to kind of get some of those things up and going. I like the Bengals. I like him up front because Trey Hendrickson is a dog.
He is.
Absolute dog. And so, look, man, it's competitive, but I think this is one where the team that has the opportunity to play with the lead most is going to be the defense that we end up talking about being the best defense.
Look, Martin Emerson Jr., Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward. If I could have one of those corners, I'm happy. Cleveland has 3. I mean, and then you throw a Myles Garrett in there, man, with that secondary. I think you're playing with house money. There's no doubt about it. I love the moves the Cincinnati Bengals made defensively. I think they weakened the Ravens a little bit by taking Geno Stone. We know those Iowa defensive backs, man, they got a nose for the ball. They just got a nose for the ball. So I think Cincinnati Bengals are back after giving up a high volume of big plays last year. I think they get back to playing really good defense this year. But the Cleveland Browns, the Bengals, they have the best defense. But Pittsburgh, I'm telling you, they're right there because they've got 2 edge rushers and Cam Hayward in the middle and Minkah Fitzpatrick on the back. So that's why the AFC North is so much fun. Buck, it's been great. I know we're running out of time, man. It's been great talking with you. I got to come over and join you on the Believe in Jaguars podcast sometime. But thank you for hanging out with us today. Always good to hang out with you. Thank you.
Hey, man, thanks so much for having me on, Solid.
All right, we'll be back. Thank you for joining us, everyone, right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast on Bally Sports Ohio.